Snuggety! This is a nug of some flat top purple, a heavy indica nug, and I have 2 weeks worth of stories for this news nug update. The first story, I'm going to jump right into it, is from Tacoma, Washington, which has begun closing down the medical marijuana shops. Why? Because legal marijuana did pass in all of Washington with I-502, and it didn't protect medical marijuana shops. So there's now this horrible consequence where medical marijuana shops are being shut down. They're being sent letters that they're no longer in legal operation with state standards and they need to close. It's something that hasn't been addressed fully by the legalization in Washington. I don't think it represents really the will of the people that patients won't have the affordable access to meds, because recreational shops do have higher taxes and different supply. So it's definitely something patients in Washington are upset about. Tacoma specifically sent out a round of letters to close down some of the medical marijuana shops, and it's something that I really hope later laws and amendments can definitely fix in Washington state. The next story for the News Nug recap, remember all of the links are provided down at the link below, and I really want you to go and read through these stories for yourself so that you get the entire story, because this is just a little nug of that news. And especially with this next story, it's kind of complicated and weird, but Congress has essentially blocked federal funding from going after medical marijuana and hemp cultivation, possibly. I don't know. It definitely needs to be clarified in the court system before I 100% believe that Congress is no longer going to allow or tolerate federal funds being spent on raids, closing medical marijuana shops, things like that. We've heard promises before. We haven't seen anything exactly like what's going on with this passed by Congress spending bill, but it's definitely something that I'm kind of hesitant to really celebrate about entirely. It's definitely a big step that Congress is saying we should support medical marijuana and protect it, but why not reschedule and reclassify marijuana so we can have legal access to it, so we can have legal research regarding it, rather than just passing another bill that says we're going to ignore the first law of federal prohibition. I don't know. I don't think it's really a complete answer, but it's definitely something that's very, very interesting. The next story for the News Nug recap is about, again, federal law versus state law, and this one has some really interesting consequences. It's about the United States deciding that Native Americans on tribal land can grow and sell and regulate, cultivate pot, even if it's not legal in that state already. So the last story was saying that if it's medically legal, they have to kind of leave it alone. But what if we're talking about Kansas or Louisiana or Arkansas? I don't know about even Nebraska. States where medical marijuana is not quite in place yet. If there's a federal tribal land for Native Americans, they can now regulate and start growing and selling marijuana on their land without waiting for the rest of the state to catch up. That's pretty exciting. It's pretty weird, and it's kind of, I don't know, I'm just really, really impatient and I want to see what happens. Is it going to be a big, huge, booming industry like casinos and gambling, or is it going to be something that tribes kind of stay away from because they're hesitant to just bring another regulated vice into their area? You know what I mean? It's definitely something that's going to play out over time, but way to go, United States, for, I guess, doing that. The next story is finally not from the United States, an international story, if you will. It's about drug legalization in the UK. This story is from Newsweek.com, and the headline is that drug legalization in the UK is only a matter of time. That has to be good news for a lot of you over across the pond. They list a few different countries that have already legalized, including America in some areas. Uruguay's moved to regulate. Where are we? Spain's regulated in some way. Holland, Portugal, Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Italy. Tons of different countries have moved to regulate either legalization or medical access to cannabis. And according to this article, it's only a matter of time until the UK government really gets it through their heads that this is the way of the world, this is the future, and this is something that they need to support as well. This is not going to happen without your help. So if you are a UK reefer, get involved. Join the groups over there. Go to marches, go to rallies, write your politicians. Make sure they know when they speak for cannabis, they're speaking for the people. And when they speak for the people, they should be for cannabis, because that's what the people are for. So way to go, UK, making strides. And this next story is from a state that everyone says is never gonna legalize. No one ever thinks Texas is gonna catch up. Well, someone in Texas wants to change that. There is a lawmaker, Texas State Representative Joe Moody, nice name, introduced a bill that would remove criminal penalties for the possession of small amounts of marijuana. There you go, Texas representative making progress for cannabis. So you really have to pay attention. You have to find their names, write them letters saying you support them, you want them to do this, you love what they're doing, and hopefully they will continue on speaking for cannabis in their political arena. Texas, I see you for sure. I really want to get down and visit Texas soon. The next story from this 2-week recap, twice as many stories. I hope you guys are keeping up, and remember, go read the full stories. Link to the News Nug link down below. The next story is good news for those people that are looking for talking points against people that are against legalization, if that makes any sense. But teen marijuana use, self-reported in many cases, has declined as states have legalized. So less teens are smoking as more states are regulating and providing legal and safe access to cannabis, medicinally or recreationally. Awesome news. One of the biggest things when it comes to legalizing or providing medical access to cannabis is, what about the kids? What about the minors? They're going to all be getting high. Everyone's going to have access to it. And studies like this prove that that's just not true. As we regulate it, actually we see less teen use over time. So good news for that talking point. Not that teens shouldn't have access to cannabis. There's a whole medicinal benefit and aspect for many young people, but that's not what that study is about or talking about at all. The next story is again about this Congress thing, the spending bill, and this article is coming from theatlantic.com, and it's saying why Congress gave in to medical marijuana. And essentially, from the viewpoint of this article, it was time for Congress to protect states' rights, because that's almost a Republican / old school way of thinking in politics. We need to protect states' rights. We need to provide them the safety and freedom to pass what is best for their people in their state and regulate it as such. So it's kind of a good news for us, but do we really agree with all of that? Well, I do like that way of thinking. I don't know. The article is really interesting. Definitely check it out from theatlantic.com, and it kind of just breaks down why Congress needed to pass this spending bill that somehow denies funding for stopping medical marijuana in state legal areas. Whew. Almost through the stories for this 2-week recap, I think. Yeah. Oh, one story I missed, which was actually from the beginning of 2 weeks ago, I'm pretty sure, is that Americans have said in a poll that they really support legalization. Go figure. Majority of Americans want states that have passed medical marijuana or legal marijuana. They want those states to have sovereignty and safety, legal protection from prosecution in the federal level. It's awesome that Americans are speaking out and getting involved, and way to go on that story. And then the last story of this, I talked really fast, 2-week News Nug recap. Whew, the last story is silly if you ask me, and it's Nebraska and Oklahoma suing Colorado because Colorado legalized cannabis and Nebraska and Oklahoma think that it's Colorado's fault that these other 2 states can't keep up with the consequences. And they didn't even cite any direct numbers of resources spent to keep up with this result of legalization. They say that there are more officers having to be asked to patrol the roads because people are trafficking cannabis, more arrests are being made for cannabis possession, and they did have some information on cannabis arrests, but when it was looking through actual what is the increase of cost since legalization that you think is Colorado's fault in your 2 states, they didn't even have a total number of damages. They're just kind of like, I don't know, it sucks that more officers have to work to patrol the state lines, and we don't really like that problem. Maybe if you guys legalized, you wouldn't have to patrol the state lines like that, and you would also be benefiting millions of dollars in tax benefits. Your citizens and locals could just stay in their own state and grow and buy weed, and you wouldn't look so silly suing a fellow state saying, "Wah, you guys legalized weed and now we have to hire extra cops and pay them more." So maybe I'm really insensitive, but I just think that is a really silly story, and that was 2 weeks worth of news nuggeting recapness. So thank you guys for watching. Stay informed and stay high. You will find the links to all of these stories on newsnug.com, and Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook will have 5 news stories with cannabis news this week. If you ever want to pass along a story, please do. I love to know what's going on in your part of the world, world reefers. Stay high. I'm off to a holiday party.